Yeah. JD didn't get the memo. He missed the first step.
If GPT is recommending them fast and advice, they should ignore it.
Okay, awesome. We'll go ahead and get started. Thank you everyone for being here at the best, most engaging, most incredible panel that you're going to participate here at the Mcleod Conference. Really excited for this. We're going to be really exploring all things AI and how to think about, we've got various leaders from different businesses. We'll introduce them here in a second, but exploring questions around use cases, how to actually get the ROI of investments, how to think about prioritization, how to sort of cut through the noise that is out there at the moment, and really kind of hear from the front lines from folks who are like making these decisions and implementing this stuff in very forward but also practical ways. So I'm really excited for this. My name is Jesse Buckingham. I'm one of the co-founders of Vooma. We're a quote-to-cash platform for brokers where we have AI workers that execute from quoting to load building to scheduling to covering freight and more. Lucky to be partnered with these folk here. And let's kick it off very briefly with introductions. And maybe to kick things off, guys, you can start by telling everyone a little bit about your kind of role within the business. And also just giving people a little bit of a picture from like where you guys are at in terms of your like AI adoption curve and journey, maybe sort of use cases that you're thinking about today, ones that you might be thinking about in the future, and to set the stage for the conversation. Sure. And I think there's one mic for these gentlemen, so I'll let you guys pass that around.
Very good. I'm John Sutton. I'm Director of Corporate Strategy for Sunset Transportation. I manage all of our freight brokerage business applications. So all the products, many of them on the expo floor here this week, that are capable of making what we do specific to a freight brokerage better. We began our AI journey about 2 years ago. We have 3 primary workflows that we're primarily using it in today. That is for carrier voice agent negotiation, email response orchestration, and then also in a few scheduling flows today as well. It's a large focus has been early on trying to, in the most cost-effective way possible, sift through what is material and what's non-material. What silver bullets are being sold compared to what we're actually going to be able to deploy at scale in the organization. So we've been taking our time. We're in no rush to get into the deep end as we take it day by day and incrementally improve how or incrementally implement AI throughout all of the various operations that our team members are doing.
Hey, good afternoon. I'm Dameron, the VP of Operations at Axle Logistics. I oversee the operations and execution of our enterprise accounts and business. And I also work with our president and others to manage our technology and our vendors. So in terms of automation, I think we're one of those companies that a lot of times it doesn't feel like we're operating with a ton of automation. What I mean by that is there's a lot of back-end automations, things like flow logics within the cloud, things in our billing group that we've automated and streamlined that really do help our team operate more efficiently. And then beyond that, I think we follow a similar path to John over at Sunset, just in the sense of there's a lot all at once happening right now with automation and AI in the industry, and we're trying to be very intentional about where we deploy those things.
Hi everyone, my name is Drouin. I'm VP of Product Strategy and Design at the WWEX Group. So we are a $4.3 billion third-party logistics company, non-asset. We are focused on parcel, LTLs, truckload. As far as our AI journey, I would say we got heavy into machine learning, I'd say probably 2019, 2020. And then when we say AI today, Gen AI, large language models, about a year or so ago. We took the approach last year where we kind of went back to the basics, spent a lot of time with all of our business leaders, and we finished 2024 with about 60 or so use cases that we wanted to tackle. Our roadmap in 2025, we had about a dozen or so AI use cases. We're focused, I would say right now, order to cash. We've got, AI from everything from on the Vooma side on quoting, load building. We've got carrier reps AI handling voice calls, email. We've got track and trace, all the way to back office. We've got AI solutions handling claims, revenue operations. We've got AI exceptions on the back end. So we've gone actually pretty wide this year to really try to understand what is possible with this type of technology.
Awesome. Super helpful. One of the questions that I think we often get as a vendor and when talking with brokerages is around this question of what are the right use cases? And one of the big roadblocks that people are, I think, are especially nervous about is AI getting in the way of customer or carrier relationships. So I'm curious how you guys sort of think about that, and as you've thought about which use cases to prioritize, what has been the framework? JD, you mentioned sort of there being 65 opportunities, and you guys zeroed in on 12 of them for 2025. What is how do you guys think about the question? What's the framework? How do you think about relationships and the human touch versus where you're prepared to introduce AI?
I love that question. I'll keep mine short. Everybody talks about, I say, linear workflows, repetitive tasks. That's kind of the common ones that come. Everybody's really nervous about relationships, and I kind of joke around. It's like we just got done with bids that are 5 rounds, so I don't know what relationships sometimes are. But there are areas where AI can, it's got the speed, the accuracy. It's going to help you win, cost to serve. So we've gone pretty wide. It's anything from linear workflows to, hey, I need to solve an exception, and I need to go solve it with data across multiple systems. So there's multiple use cases we've tackled for that.
And so it sounds like you have been maybe less concerned around the sort of, or maybe more ambitious in terms of the types of use cases. Within that, then what's the framework that you've applied to how you thought about what to prioritize?
Yeah, for us, it's been the business outcomes. It's what is possible. I think everybody right now is in the state of it's new technology. How do you want it to interact or not interact, especially on the customer side? I think on the carrier side, most people have been willing to use, let's say, the voice or the email AIs. But for us, I think we're testing the boundaries at this point. So I don't want to say we're experimenting a lot and kind of just testing it out, but we are running, I'd say, a lot of micro pilots on multiple use cases to really get a feel of what is possible. The art of the possible has been our focus, starting small and then moving to production grade scale over time.
So for you, it's actually starting by getting the data so that you can kind of figure out what the business case is, and then making decisions about what you actually scale out fully across the business. Dylan.
Oh, sorry. I think for us, it's been a fun journey. I think of automation in the sense of most folks see it and they think efficiency, right? What do we all see in here? I'm going to drive up my loads per head. I'm going to improve our total load output, anything like that. I think the use cases are only getting more broad, and so to Jonathan's point about expansion and the scope of the needs and the addressable problems out there, it's endless. And so for me, a group that's been transformed a lot over the last year or two is our night team. And I think of quoting spot boards overnight or distribution lists that quote early morning pickup, right, where you have the opportunity to make good margins. Or even something as simple as filling out a location request, automatically. So those things are all really huge, and it's been really cool to see that transformation.
Dylan, one of the things in speaking with you and Sean as well, who you work with, that I found interesting was how part of the motivation for implementing AI tools has been actually around employee retention, because as we know, brokerage is a really demanding job for folks, and you really start to see the benefits of folks that are able to make it past that sort of 2, 3, 4 year mark. But one of the things that kind of burns people out often is just the intensity of all the stuff. And so I always thought that was kind of an interesting framing as well of both sort of efficiency, which I think is obvious, but also kind of around retention and creating a really good experience for folks that are not spending their time on the menial.
Yeah, I think it's no secret, as you want to hear, 80% of people leave freight in the first couple of years. That's a stat that I heard that stuck with me, and I sat in a desk in brokerage for my first 7 years in transportation. I know the stuff that wears people down. I think most of y'all do, right? It's, again, quoting, it's taking calls from carriers you can't work with, the list goes on. And so, huge notion for us right now is how do we keep good people in the building, right? Where are they getting burned out? What are the tasks where quality suffers? Let's talk about fatigue, right? you have a lane that's going to attract a bunch of unqualified carriers. You got to answer 100 calls that you can't work with. You finally get one you can work with, you're probably not even going to work them down to a reasonable price, right? Because you're burned up. So we're excited about the notion. I think that's certainly a big part of the changing landscape for us is, can technology help us keep good people?
And whenever you think about folks that are on second shift or third shift that are top performers, what's the first question that they're going to ask once they get really good at doing their job on second shift or third shift? When can I go to first shift? And now you've got churn, you have to backfill, but what if I told you that you can hire, you will never have to hire again, but the kicker is this person or whatever you hire will only be 70 or 80% as effective as your number one performer on first shift in that same role? I would say yes, like give me that person, right? If I called my bank today and it was after 5 p.m. and an AI picked up, I wouldn't be surprised. You know, it's 2025. So as a carrier calls in after 5 p.m. outside of business hours, should they be surprised if for whatever reason they get a virtual receptionist that has someone in the background working to support any exceptions that it raises? So from a turnover and a retention perspective, I'm in love with the concept of what it's going to be able to do very quickly and what it's already doing for us outside of normal operating hours. But as we target the various lenses that we look through, like what would be a good opportunity for AI, there's a couple of different dimensions. The first is like low cognitive, repetitive tasks. If I can go take someone off the street that doesn't even know what freight brokerage is, and by the end of the day, I can have them supporting a certain task. Is that POD retrieval? Is that customers asking for an ETA or a location and providing it to them? Then that's a slam dunk eligible task for AI. But we also have to think of it from the lens of how many 2-screen processes can we turn into a 1-screen process with AI? Is there information does someone get summoned to do something? There we go. Through email. Do you get a request over email that spurs you to go into another application to meet the need of that request? If so, why can't we have an LLM through Mcleod's very expansive suite of APIs, by the way, go and fetch that information to pipe it into a sidecar to tee up a response for you to just turn, yeah, this looks good to me, right? And then the third dimension of it, as Jesse mentioned at the genesis of the question, was is it carrier, is it customer? We find ourselves over time being more open to innovating as it pertains to voice agents or introducing AI workflows into the carrier side, especially as it pertains to negotiation. It's just a much more low-risk scenario for us if that agent gets off the rails with a carrier, especially one that we've never worked with before, as compared to a high-yield client of 10+ years, right? But success leaves success for clues in other areas. If we can get a voice agent working for the carrier side, why can't we get it working for the customer side on one day as well? So incrementally, we've identified 22 tasks that over time are going to be a slam dunk for an AI to be able to perform, whether that's over the phone or a request that's summoned over email. The three most important things that we need are time, money, and patience to be able to get all of that eventually supported.
Yeah, John, there's a few things that I think are interesting to pick up on, especially as you think about starting points, because there are folks that have some nervousness about implementing AI, and I think they want to see proof, they want their teams to sort of build confidence in it. And we've had success with folks starting in some of those use cases like after hours, where the experience for the carrier is clearly better. We also have folks that are interested, for example, maybe they do want to apply voice AI to handle inbound calls, but they may only direct it to the AI if nobody is available to actually pick up the call. And so you can sort of start with these situations where it's strictly better, and then you develop your own confidence in the efficacy of it. So there are, we do see sort of different folks take different approaches to that. One of the questions, so JD, you mentioned this, the importance of actually determining the business case. And one of the questions that I have for you guys is around ROI and how you think about ROI. So I'm sort of curious about the framework for measuring it. Like, how do you sort of think about it for specific use cases. And maybe like the sort of concrete question is, I'm curious about like non-obvious sources of ROI that you guys have experienced when implementing AI solutions, and it'd be great to get specific, but also like when you guys are developing the business case, like what sort of stuff do you sort of call like too fuzzy to bankers ROI versus like here are the hard dollars, and like what are you actually underwriting, and then how do you sort of see that through? Because I do see that as like one of the things that sort of separates some of the like best folks that I've seen at implementing this stuff.
That's a great question. I think in our case, I mean, we're pretty binary. It is all about the business outcomes. In our case, is how's the technology or the product going to help us grow the margin or reduce our cost to serve? So I would say that's definitely our starting framework. Now, every initiative has a different kind of, I would say, thesis on what that will be to start. But think about email quoting, for example, right? It's, hey, I hope we're going to grow margin. Now, when you start deploying the large language models in your inbox and you're responding to the customer, it's very difficult to just tell right away how much more margin did you add to the business. But you can see some of the indicators pretty quickly. For example, if a customer is emailing for a quote request, without Vooma, it'll take 32 minutes. Then once you deploy a Vooma-like product, next thing you know, you're responding within 15 seconds. You know if you've done any sort of work around pricing customers, the speed to response is an easy indicator you're going to win more freight. So you start seeing that type of signal pretty early on, and you know you're going down the right path. If I keep going down the email quoting, you'll start seeing the speed change. You can see, okay, these customers have such a low win rate. Now we're going to just repurpose that sales rep time. They're winning 1 out of 100. Let's repurpose that time. I think I keep going on the email quoting. Then you start repurposing the role. So we've had customer bases, customer segments where instead of the rep just responding to quote after quote after quote, we said, hey, one of the new KPIs we're going to add, because we basically freed up your time, we're auto quoting for you. We expect you, if you don't have an update between 15 to 20 minutes after you've quoted, call up the customers, and suddenly you have a scenario where you used to win 10%, but you added a new task to the rep because you freed up the time. Next thing you know, they're winning 30% of the quotes. So we are pretty adamant of it's got to drive back to an outcome. Again, one of those two, margin growth, cost optimization, or reducing cost to serve. I think what's been the most surprising is for how much fear people have, and I think there's extremes in this space right now. A lot of people hear AI, it's like, hey, it's going to replace me, I'm going to lose my job, to I think the people that don't like it say it's an autocomplete at best. I think the truth is probably in the middle, but the most surprising, I would say, without a doubt, in every single initiative we've had it, whether it's the simple chatbot to get a lot of information or the complex like multi-agent in the back office, is as soon as they see the small traction, we kind of mentioned employee satisfaction, we've seen that on all the cases just go up. It is doing kind of that linear grunt work. So no matter what the flow, I think everybody's been pretty happy to see, okay, wow, this AI is actually helping me in this task that I actually don't want to be doing.
Yeah. Dylan, John, curious how you guys see it.
Yeah, I think it's been interesting for me. The first thing that I try and think of is, what need do we want to address, right? And by that I mean, you never could calculate or quantify ROI on something that you didn't measure before. So when I think of a product like Vooma, we had accounts that won one load a month. We didn't know we were getting 300 quote requests, right? And all of a sudden you do. And so I think visibility and any automation that we've run has given coaching and management insights a whole new meaning, right? So accountability on the floor, visibility to accounts. Frankly, I'd categorize that these days as customer care, right? Are we caring for the customer better if we're getting them more quotes? The second piece of that, which is adding revenue and margin, which is the business that we're all in, is you can't win loads you don't quote. And the more loads you quote, the more loads you win. And so this, automation has helped us quote more freight, and in turn, it's helped us win more.
We look at it through a lot of different lenses, but one of the things that our tech strategy revolves around is this North Star that the tech works for the people don't work for the tech. And we enter into these initiatives with the focus of both customer NPS and employee NPS in mind. And I think the best way that I can describe it is, does everyone remember that scene from The Office where Dwight and Jim go on a sales call and they're like, this is our competitor, and you're on hold, and this is us, and they call them, and someone picks up immediately, oh my God, that's the world that we want. And we have had a lot of success over the past 2 to 3 years bringing in customers that the common theme has been the incumbent has automated the relationship out of our business. And that's very important to us as a brokerage that prioritizes boutique service for our clients. We're not going to be the cheapest, but we are going to tailor a program that is specific to you, and your satisfaction is our largest concern. And to be able to meet that, that customer NPS and making sure that that's glowing across the board, we want that to be glowing for, we have a lot of customers that are more cost conscious than others, and the cost conscious customers, they want more automation. They want to eliminate as much human touch in this as possible. And we have freight spend decision makers in their late 20s, early 30s, that are coming into their own, and they want to be able to go to their boss and say, look at something I was able to do that you previously weren't, the person in this role before me was not able to do. I don't wait 10 minutes for Sunset to respond to a rate. They created a chatbot for me and it automatically gives me a rate. And being able to pass that true or false question, is this an additional service that you can provide? In addition to the traditional channels that have already existed, can you continue to expose and offer new channels to be able to meet your customer where they are and interact with them in their preferred way? We're not going to put you into a box and say that this is what you have to do, but we're going to tell you this is what your options are, and you tell us which one you want. But at the end of the day, our commitment to you is that we're going to make sure that the person that's supporting your business is empowered by tech enough to the point that they're always able to pick up the phone and put out the fire that's coming up, that's guaranteed to come up. We're in an industry where 8% of the time things go wrong 100% of the time. I think our friends at Uber Freight found out that failure rate is way too high and that we actually do need people in this industry. So how can you make sure that those people are always having enough free time through background efficiencies to be able to continue to support that client's day-to-day need?
Yeah, John, one of the things I thought was interesting there, and I think it was maybe you that shared with me that there was like a shipper RFP process where it was maybe one of the first times where the shipper actually actively asked if it was possible to get automated rates back through an email channel, yes. which was really interesting, because I do think that over time the expectation of service is actually going to shift, where it's like, hey, why do you not have AI here? Like, why am I waiting for something? And I think that will take a little bit of time to play through, but I do think that it's going to come. The other thing, JD, that you mentioned that I think is interesting was that one of the best ways to make sure that you get the ROI from these investments I've seen is to be quite disciplined around the base case return that you're going to get, but that there is often this maybe unexpected second order benefit from the reallocation of people's time. So your example there of being able to say, okay, now you're not quoting, but you are following up, yeah. And that improves your win rate is a great example of this. We've seen this on the load building automation side as well, where we've had brokers that are working on specific accounts, and they might have been spending 2 hours a day building loads, and you take that down to seconds, and there's a huge time saving there. But that person now is getting better appointments or being more responsive on customer service, and now because they've been able to take that off their plate, the broker that they're also is maybe also serving that customer is not, and therefore doesn't have that time available. And so I'm curious, yeah, if that sort of pattern resonates for you.
Yeah, I think the second order concept, I think we're seeing that emerge more and more, especially as we get further into the initiatives. I give another example on the account management side, where we've got a blend of, I'm going to say machine learning, kind of monitoring, okay, an account manager's got 100 accounts in some of our cases on the parcel side of the house, LTL, and the account manager, 20 years ago had to respond to email quotes, right? Now it's all API, customer logs in, but now it's really interesting to see what is happening is we're putting the machine learning on top of the shipment data. Mm-hmm. So the reps are coming in now, and instead of trying to figure out which of my 100 customers should I work with or do XYZ with, we've got basically the AI suggesting to the customer, or to the rep, hey, go talk to these 5 customers. They're about to have, for example, right now, a seasonal spike for Q4. UPS's parcel is going to get quite behind their supply chain. Go have a conversation with a customer, say, hey, I need to prepare having additional trailers in your yard for the next 90 days. So it's giving that type of really strategic conversation. And if you can be, I would say, early adopters to be doing that, you're not calling the customer just to check in anymore. And I think we're seeing that especially in the account manager, to blend the machine learning, the Gen AI, and have the proactive conversation just like you're saying. I think it's very refreshing for a shipper to be hearing that. And I give the example of the Q4. We've got quite a few, probably a couple hundred account managers right now going through their book of business because the Gen AI is just telling them, go have these 5 conversations, place equipment, and that's transformative for our business and the customer experience.
That's a great example. Either of you have anything that you want to share there? Otherwise, I've got another question.
I've got a quick one. Yeah, I think a fun one for us that's kind of been a secondary or unexpected ROI is the opportunity to provide insights to reps. And so what I mean by that is something like you see in a product like Vooma is you get historical insights, right? How many times does a rep make money on a load last week and they give a different quote this week because they missed it? And how can we help our reps be more accurate and give them really obvious information and make it easy to replicate? And then secondly, I think that in general, our goal with anything that we're running like this is to help our reps be more educated and more knowledgeable about their portfolios and their customers and their carriers. And so back to just having eyes on new things that you couldn't measure or track before, we're gaining visibility to so many different layers that we couldn't see before. And we're trying to push that stuff back and say, hey, not only is this going to help you be more efficient or help you give a better quote or whatever, but it's also going to give you a reminder or an insight back and say, hey, you should jot this down, make a note.
You create a positive feedback loop where you have an AI, particularly for the email quoting experience. Email comes in, LLM synthesizes, hey, to the best of my knowledge, this customer requested a quote on this lane. Observes the outbound response, whether the user used the AI application or not to provide the response, and then watches it for it to be won. You have this nice envelope that can be fed over to your rating engine that, hey, this is what we quoted, and this is whether or not we won it, and you've got a great little data feedback loop there. But there's also the accountability layer of all of this too. We go into this thinking that efficiency gain is the most important thing that we're going to be able to take out of this. Taking a 1 and 15-second process in the way of cutting and pasting information out of an email and into a rating engine down to a 15-second process by just having the AI synthesizing all of it. But the AI is also synthesizing everything that isn't being quoted as well. And that's very eye-opening in a lot of scenarios too. Very frequently, sales they would get ambushed. They would go on site for a customer visit, and they would say, hey, unfortunately, we haven't been winning any freight. And the first thing that they hear is, well, it's because you haven't been quoting anything. And that's not a fun conversation to be in. So now we understand not just the win rates for what was being quoted, but we actually understand for the first time our true engagement rate with a client of the emails that you are, of the quotes that you are requesting, even if you're cattle calling us, right? Are you putting us on a thread with 50 other brokers? How many are we actually responding to? So that way we can eliminate that ambush scenario that we just discussed.
We all know that everybody loves change.
Well, Jesse,
yeah,
brokers love 2 things. No, they hate 2 things more than anything. It's change and the status quo.
Yeah, I like that. Well, we all know that rolling out technology is incredibly easy and it all goes exactly to plan and people, just celebrating having to change behaviors. That isn't the reality that I think most people face. And I'm curious to understand from you guys, what have been some of the roadblocks that you guys have seen in trying to roll out, AI products or really any other technology product? And what are the lessons that you guys have learned about ways to sort of navigate those? John, I'll let you kick this one off.
The billboard in Times Square from Palantir that said "Stop hiring humans" is making my life very hard. I'll tell you that. Believe it or not, it's not just freight tech decision makers that have LinkedIn. Your brokers actually have it too. And whenever they're doom scrolling at night and their algorithm feeds them this giant billboard in Times Square that says stop hiring humans, start using AI, and then John the next day says, hey guys, we're doing a kickoff call for an AI project, they're gonna put 2 and 2 together that this may not end well for them, right? And so they're just, AI companies and their marketing and their go-to-marketing strategy and their sales motions are making it very difficult to implement AI just at a thesis, right? But we've had FlowLogics for the better part of 12 years now. And I remember the initial concerns from our team members whenever we got FlowLogics. They thought that this was going to be a product that was going to automate their job away immediately. And we had that with blockchain, we had that with digital freight matching, we've had it with AI, and it's just going back to them and being like, okay, of all of the parallel initiatives or similar initiatives that we've done over the years, where you've had some concerns that position elimination was a desired outcome of this, how many times has that actually been something that has came out of this? It's a goose egg every single time. So you have to be able to garner trust within the users that are going to be working alongside all of the workflows that you stand up through it as well. And one of the things that I unfortunately wish I would have done whenever we were starting this process is I shouldn't have designed in a mirror. I shouldn't have just looked at this and said, wow, that's unbelievably cool, we need to start using this soon. It should have been bringing in the various stakeholders across the org and said, this is what it can do. If we bring this in, will you commit to using it, and what does success look like to you? It shouldn't have been what does success look like to John, or what does success look like to the board. It should have been what does success look like to you. And if I could go back in time, I would have saved myself a lot of headache if I would have actually, human in the loop requires the human. I should have brought in the human. And whenever we were going through the proof of concept phase, getting them involved and getting their input before we ever reached an agreement with the provider.
Yeah, so it sounds like this point is kind of an interesting one of, what actually has been the impact of technology, putting aside AI. Has it really eliminated jobs, or has it removed specific tasks that happen? JD, I think you've maybe got a perspective on this that I'd be curious to hear. I want it spicy though.
Not to contradict John, but yes, I mean, nobody wants to say it, but there are certain roles that will change quite a bit. And I think I would argue it's nothing to fear. It's going to adjust. I think the reality, some of these changes are going to be slower. There are going to be roles that, probably will get eliminated. There's probably a role that will change. But it will change, I would say, in a different way that we don't know today. It's like we're trying to operate and think of how the business operates today, which we don't know how it will be in 5 years or 10 years. And keep going back to the example I said, the account manager concept. So we ship probably, 300,000 LTL shipments a month right now. And these account managers probably 20 years ago had 5 or 10 accounts quoting via email. It would be literally impossible to ship that many LTL shipments if customers didn't log into a portal and quote themselves. And I think about the account manager role, it still exists. It's still here. Now they're handling a very large book of business. And when I see the AI we're delivering, I was just mentioning to them, it's now their day-to-day from 20 years ago, it was a lot of quoting, a lot of exception management, billing issues. Now we're empowering them to say, hey, out of your 150 customers, you've got these 5 to call this week. Here's why the AI is picking up all these signals. Go have that conversation. It's like, I didn't even know 12 months ago we would be at this stage. I didn't know 12 months ago I'd have a language model that can tell the intent of this email from the customer went to the finance side of the house and they're frustrated. So I think there's a lot of these things, and you could go case by case. I mean, I think about track and trace is a popular one right now. I got to the space in 2012, and I remember I did software engineering before, and I thought, this industry, by 2017, it's all gone, it's all digital. Can't believe I made $500 margin on this one load, couldn't believe it. And I think about the macro point visibility that came out. We're probably tracking 65, 75% automated today, and we still have a massive amount of people working at track and trace. So I think it evolves slowly at times. So there's some roles that get impacted, but overall, new things emerge and things change that we don't know today.
Yeah. So, Dylan, what was the stat that you shared at the beginning on broker churn? How long do they last?
80%, 2 years.
80% last 2 years. We're not in this for role elimination, right? But we are limit testing how much can we do with how few people. As we naturally have that churn, we've very much been limit testing how low of a headcount can we really push to run our organization. Year over year, our headcount is down 18% from natural attrition that we have not backfilled. But we know that we've been radically successful with so many, with the elimination of high touch workflows or the gain efficiencies through those. We've reduced the user inputs required to get a shipment from entry to funds collected by 25% in the past 12 months. And it's in combination with AI, in combination with BPA tools like FlowLogix, that we're not eliminating any positions, but we are very much making it very difficult to backfill them.
Yeah, I think for me, the fun part of it is there are roles and skill sets coming to light that you can't replicate right now, right? And I think that's where the reps that do stick around are feeling like they can shine and flourish, right? You're even more valuable when you manage a larger portfolio, when you can talk to your customers more, when you can go see people, right? When you can turn it off and spend time with your wife and kids and keep this job. And so I think that for me is like the other portion of it is what skill sets become more invaluable as we begin to automate and bypass some of the stuff that can be automated easily, or not easily, but you know, all things considered. And then Jesse, I wanted to close the loop too on something that you mentioned. I think this maybe ties all this together. You're talking about roadblocks. We had two types of adopters in our company. One group said they could do it better than an automation, and I'm talking specifically about spot bots, right? You have reps that have been here forever, they know the markets. I quote better than a bot, I don't need it. The other type was hiding behind their work, right? If I have a bot quote my loads, I have to call my customers. I don't know if I want that free time. So I think it's been interesting seeing those two exceptions kind of surface over the years. But ultimately, the proof is in the pudding. The more that your team has success with these automations, the more others will adopt it, and they will have to shed that opinion that they have.
Yeah, it's interesting if you look at sort of some of the maths of what you were describing, like if you've got sort of a natural employee attrition rate of something like 20 to 30%, and I see that consistently across brokers, sometimes even higher than that, and you're able to drive out, 20 to 30% productivity improvements per year, there isn't actually this like reality that people are sort of losing their job, right, in a way. And then the roles that remain are probably more fulfilling and engaging, probably have a higher potential to be retaining, which I think is really, really interesting. And there was one other thing that I wanted to respond to, and now I'm blanking on it. I want to shift gears a little bit, maybe to thinking about how do you think the business of brokerage could change over the next 5 years, or even longer? And maybe like one angle to that is how are sort of shippers' expectations and like changing as a result of AI?
I can kick it off real quick, and I'll start by, again, following the trajectory or rabbit hole of spot pricing. I mean, API is fairly new, right? But what's the impact to you if you're not using a spot bot today? You're competing against 20 of them, right? So I think shippers are aware of these automations. They're getting better cost, quicker responses, more responses. There's a lot of benefits from the shipper side if carriers and brokers are honoring their rates. But I think that's one challenge to be mindful of is you're competing against automation if you're not using it. The second part of that, as a shipper behavior, is shippers are not putting transactional business out to contract right now, right? Spot's been cheaper than contract for 30-something months. If I can API it in 1 second on John's bot, on his chat bot, I'm gonna do that. It ships one time a year. The broker's probably not gonna take it, even if I send it to him. So we've seen some changes starting there, but I do think, back to the landscape, the environment has already changed,
I think the shippers, they know that we're implementing it and they expect to realize savings as part of us implementing it. If they know that we're doing more with less, then they should anticipate seeing that in the rate. It is going to be their general mantra on it. But from the standpoint of the next 5 years, I legitimately can't even think about next week with how fast some of this is moving. And if we draw parallels from the years 1998 to 2004. In 1998, only 6% of American households had access to the internet. In 2004, 61%. In 2006, the first generation iPhone releases. 2007, 5% of American consumers have a smartphone. 2012, 60% of them. Innovation takes roughly 5 to 7 years to become commonplace across the American consumer and the privately held American business. We know it's coming. We know it's here to stay. We know that we have to be on the right side of history with all of this. But I legitimately don't know what it looks like, but what I do know is I'm going to continue to listen to those internally that whenever they say, John, can you do this? I know that the answer is always yes. And if they're bought in, then I'm going to continue to embrace that. But we have to go about it in a manner where we don't lose our touch, but at the same time, we have to remain competitive in the landscape by using it.
JD, one thing that I did want to sort of pick up on that I'm just remembering was when people think about the impact of AI, it's very easy to like concretely understand like what goes away, right? So you might not like build loads anymore. But it's very hard to sometimes conceptualize like what fills that space. And so the default is that, you go to like, there's a ton of job loss. But to me, like when you sort of think about things in that way, you're almost sort of admitting that you're like out of productive way, like ideas about how to spend your time. In our line of work, we build software, and engineering is, being like heavily transformed as a result of AI. And we have more demand for engineers than ever, even though our engineers continue to get more and more productive, because we are not out of ideas about things that we could do, problems that we can solve. And I think that like, if you look at even logistics on a macro scale, if AI does have the capacity to increase productivity across the economy, we should expect higher levels of demand, ultimately, for physical products, higher GDP growth, which will translate actually into higher growth and demand for the movement of physical products across the economy. And so, I think it's like at all layers, like, I think the pitch, it's not super clear how that all plays out because it's not quite as crystal clear, but we've kind of seen that trend before.
Yeah. It's interesting with AI, I was wondering, like, why is it so indexed? And I think about, Anthropic's founder, who comes, I swear it's right before capital raise, he comes on TV and said, no more engineers within 18 months. And to your point, it's like, I think we have more demand than ever for engineers. And if you've tried any vibe coding, you can't get to production scale. So you still need engineers. But it's interesting, right? A few years ago, I can't remember what year they stopped. The C.H. Robinson, for example, in their quarterly report, they would always publish how many shipments per person they were moving. I can't remember if it was on a quarterly basis, daily basis. But that was kind of a norm of our industry. We've got to push productivity. Like, we just have to automate as many things as we can, push the shipments per head per person. And, CH a few years ago took that away, and now we've got AIs, and right now there's fear. So to your point, it's like, I'm not sure why that is so indexed to that direction when, in a way, there's actually been no proof of this happening in our space. Yeah, the roles changed, but there's still a lot of people working in our space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. JD, the question that we had before is like, how do you maybe see the role of brokerage changing? How do you see sort of shipper expectations changing as a result of AI?
Yeah, I think probably the only thing I would add, I think they're spot on, I think the speed is probably the biggest change I'm seeing, especially with the new generation, like John said, coming into those leadership decision-making roles. I think they expect the Amazon or commercial tech, the instant of everything, instant pricing, instant visibility, instant feedback. I think the instant, the speed, and then being proactive. I think the AI I actually think it's going to unleash that side. You're going to get very proactive on the truck is late, you've contacted the receiver, you made the changes. So I think the speed and being proactive, I think it's going to be a core focus next coming years.
Yeah, so it's like today, logistics is kind of necessarily, it's challenging, like you're in a reactive state of mind, but if you can move to a world where issue is identified and then you have either people or AI workers that are going to start to like figure out how to get ahead of that issue, that becomes like the new norm for shipper expectations.
One other angle that I think kind of goes unnoticed on the AI and automation front is fraud and identity and this whole theft issue that's really been super present the last year or two. I feel like visibility from a shipper standpoint is already the expectations the highest it's ever been. It's only going to keep getting higher. And I think my hope on the brokerage side in 5 years is that we can hold a higher standard to carriers for visibility, right? Which would in turn help us to solve for and alleviate some of the identity spoofing and some of these gaps in the armor that I would argue they're all chalked up to technology shortcomings, right? And I think some of that does come with carrier education and carriers. It's a super fragmented market, but paying attention to industry trends. But I do think technology will play a part in combating theft and fraud.
Shifting gears a little bit, there is an explosion of opportunities to purchase AI software in freight and really everywhere. And I'm curious how you guys kind of make sense of it all. Like, how do you sort of cut through the noise to get the signal? How are you evaluating partners that you choose to work with? Maybe I'll start with you, Dylan.
Sure. Yeah, I think for us, we've tried to keep it really simple, right? What are the problems we're trying to solve for? Who solves them, right? And on top of that, we are trying to be very intentional about who's out there. So just having knowledge of products that are available is huge. Case studies and word of mouth go a really long way. But for us in this market, we have focused on adding revenue. So what are the automations out there that will help us add volume, load count, and margin? And I think as the market dynamics shift and change, our needs will change. But we just try and be really intentional about that. You can't boil the ocean. Everyone here probably got 100 emails last week. Once you signed up for the conference, it's no secret, right? There's a lot of options to choose from out there, and a lot of them are great. I think it's fantastic. But for us, we don't want to boil the ocean. We want to focus on a simple thing and double down on that until we've solved for it, and then try and tackle the next one. The other thing too, with change management, we have a lot of cradle to grave reps. Probably 500. We can't push automations on that group easily, so we are also intentional by saying we're going to do things incrementally. Too much change at once is a bad thing for our group.
Sean, hand it over to you. Folks, just before you, we'll open the floor to questions here in a couple of minutes, so if there's stuff that you guys want to ask any of the panelists, start noodling.
If I was having to pick a horse in the current landscape as I started my AI journey, I would be a real bully about it, honestly. I would want to pick a provider that I can feel confident that is still going to exist in 2 years. And the internet analogy that I used earlier, 1998 to 2004, and 2001 the bubble popped, right? If you compare where we're at with AI being made available to businesses that operate at our size, we're in about year 2.5 to 3, very similar to when that bubble popped. I would be asking a lot of questions right now when making a strategic investment, because not only are you going to have to, make a cash investment in this, there's also a time investment in this. I wish I would have known that this was likely going to be almost a new full-time job for me whenever I made the decision. But the good news is Jonathan, Dylan, and I have done so much work for you already as Mcleod customers. You stand to get a lot more of a turnkey integration for the workflows that you want to stand up, thanks to the time and the knowledge share and the hours that we have spent working with the smart players that are supporting the AI space here today. But I would be asking those providers, can I please speak with a customer that's been with you for at least a year? And can I also speak with a customer that was with you for a year and churned as well? I would like to hear why they left you and either hung it up on their AI initiatives or chose another horse, and why they chose that horse. But I would be strategic, and no different than if you were to go out and get a new TMS. Mcleod, I'm not suggesting that in this report. No different than if you were to go out and get a new TMS, wouldn't you take it out to bid? Why can't you take your AI provider out to bid, whoever you want to do that with? Conduct a formal RFP. Treat this the same way a shipper treats you whenever they're trying to give you their business. There's enough quality providers in the space that you should really, really, really do everything that you can to make sure that you're comfortable with the provider that you've chosen.
I'm going to double down a couple things you said. I think that there's 3 things we've been hyper-focused on. So like I said, we're a year into the journey. Kind of like you said, the first criteria is what proof do you have in actual production? If you've done any sort of AI, build your own, evaluate, language models take a time to ramp up in solutions. So what have you done in production for somebody? And no demos. Like, don't believe prototypes and demos in this vibe coding world. You can literally make believe anything. The demo is going to look real. They're going to connect it to a couple APIs that look real. So proof in production, I would say that has to be the start. And to John's point too, of there's probably going to be disruption. Some people will make it, some will be acquired. Our big focus too is what can you deliver in the next 3 to 6 months? We're not going to go buy into the 12, 18 month, 24 month vision when the rate of change is what it is today. It's like, what can we, if we go live, what can you solve in 3 months? If you succeed with that, then we're going to grow together. Like, I'm not buying the 18 months right now. It's just too difficult to figure out. And I think what has worked really well, and I credit companies like Vooma, the companies that are, I would say, the deep technologists that are in the Silicon Valley, New York, I don't want to bias the locations, but the rate of change of this technology is so quick that we've seen a lot of success for the companies based in these types of locations with the right talent coming out of the best schools. And that is where AI talent wants to be. So, you know, I kind of joke around the Midwest startup brokerage versus the Silicon Valley. There is a big delta in the technology going there.
Yeah, in a way, like it's very hard to predict the future, and so you're like buying some amount of like an insurance policy in a way of like who is like given that the future is uncertain, who are you like partnering with that can like help adjust to whatever the future becomes?
I keep saying the Silicon Valley. I'm going to give an example. MCPs. I know it's more on the technology side, but there's a paper that came out. I think it was October, November of last year. Of an integration concept, MCP, of like, hey, this might work in the AI space. And you think about that came out, I think, in November. Yeah. And now the adoption, not even a year in, of how much disruption. So this, for a vendor to say, here's the next 18 to 24 months, I think it's just very difficult. So I just want to trust that they're going to be able to adapt with whatever will be coming around the corner.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like there's just kind of a common thread here of like deliver results quickly is the kind of frame here for a lot of these decisions. I'd love to open it up to the floor for folks to get the opportunity to ask questions. Is there anyone who has a question here in the audience? And are we good? Maybe we'll grab this microphone. Is that the right approach? Or you can go ahead and why don't I'll repeat it for the audience.
I'm just curious how long you expect after you implement an AI solution, how long you expect that to live before something newer or a new solution might come along.
So the question was, what's the half-life of that? How long after you implement an AI solution should you expect that to be a good solution to the problem?
I can't predict the future right now. So that's why we're trying to get everything we're trying to get to production. We're trying to do it pretty quickly. It's like, let's prove out in the pilot stage. And how quickly can we get it to, let's say, impacting 5% of what's in production? Once we're in production, we try to scale as quickly as possible. What we've seen is we'll typically get, quote unquote, stuck at a certain percentage. So depending on the workflow, we might get to 60, 70% automated. Maybe it's 80%, so you'll calibrate. As far as the new, I think that's the challenging part, right? I think right now we're seeing with MCP servers. That was nowhere on our roadmap, on our plans. We saw the paper come out 7 months ago. Now we're deploying MCP servers, and we're seeing quite a bit kind of redesign, reimagine what is possible. So again, in this category, it's very difficult right now to know that shelf life. I think you just have to know that it's going to land of uncertainty quite a bit.
John, I'm curious to hear your perspective on it. As somebody who is involved in building these solutions, we think about it as like once you actually build these, you start to learn about the boundaries of what the capabilities of the system are. And through that, you accumulate a lot of learnings about how to build a better version of it. And so I think a lot about this as a vendor, because as we've gone in to solve certain problems, we've realized that some approaches, work incredibly well, others don't allow us to get where we need to go, and we then reinvent it. And so a lot of this is about being able to, you can't be precious in the current moment. Like if you think about the old version of software, it was pretty straightforward. Like you kind of understood. Like you would get SQL databases, and there'd be some UI that was on top of it. Everyone kind of like knew the playbook. But we're kind of playing in a world now where it's not even really clear what the sort of end state of these systems will end up looking like. And so from our perspective as a builder in this space, what we do is we sort of embrace the uncertainty and know that things are going to be able to like change, and we try to architect with flexibility so that we can embrace any of those changes. But you're also kind of prepared to throw the baby out with the bathwater if it's called for it, to be able to solve the problem better with learnings. John, I'll let you.
Yeah, the futurist in me has to wonder, is AI the last major invention that humanity will ever need to come up with? And will everything just be incremental from here as we continue to innovate? And then there are days where the AI is a drunk 5-year-old, and I say we're not quite there yet. But the way that we look at it is we have to ask, is there a more deterministic way to go about meeting this workflow or meeting this integration need? In current state of affairs, if there's an API way to go about whatever the particular workflow is, we're going to very much prefer that methodology over a non-deterministic AI solution. But we also have to accept that 3 to 5 years from now, they will likely be just as equally efficient, with non-deterministic workflows being able to be nearly pinpoint accurate in how it goes about meeting the needs of certain requests. But ultimately, I wonder if there is a half-life, as Jesse mentioned, on some of these things. There's always going to be a better way, but I don't necessarily think it's a true rip and replace from this point forward. Maybe it's just a little bit of a renovation.
I think there's one caveat that's kind of interesting to think about. I think everyone brings solutions to the table for existing problems, right? For us, I think you can identify a great partner if there's someone that can help you solve new problems, right? So is your partner somebody that will take your feedback and run with it and take it seriously, or someone that will sweep it under the rug? But I think in this space, to everyone's point, the goalpost is moving every day, right? And you've constantly got to solve for a different problem or a different dynamic, a faster deadline. The innovators out there are finding ways to level up and do those things in real time and keep you where you're always, scaling with the industry.
Great question.
So have you guys, is the technology, has it reached that proactive space yet? I hear a lot of like call and response, like chatbots and things like that. But is there a way, like, if I have a macro point on a load and all of a sudden that truck stops, will there be a call out to say, hey, this is going to be late now, let me go ahead and signal to call the customer, things like that? Was that on the 3 to 5 year plan still, or is that happening now?
So the question was, a lot of discussion about sort of reactive chatbots. Are we sort of in the proactive stage? And maybe the specific example was around sort of track and trace. If a truck isn't looking like it's on track for delivery, can you have an agent that can maybe reschedule the appointment, reach out, figure out what's going on, notify customers, etc.
Yeah, through the philosophy of orchestration, think of all of the workflows that your team members are doing on any given day as a swimming pool. And this swimming pool has 5 lanes. In one lane, you have team members that are quoting and rating shipments. In one lane, you're building loads and scheduling them in the TMS. One lane, you're sourcing carriers and qualifying and disqualifying them. One lane, you're tracking those shipments, execution, visibility. And then last, you're meeting the billing requirements of that load in very efficient ways. And you have all kinds of tech that is swimming in this pool all day alongside your team members. And now you have this concept of orchestration, which is the lifeguard, right? Can AI and your AI partner be looking for signals in these applications and the data points that these applications make available to you to look for potential calls to action? And the answer to that is yes, regardless of what your role is, whether you're in scheduling, tracking, carrier sales, customer-facing positions. All of those applications and through what AI is capable of doing today, many of those providers are already incorporating that today. I'm aware of Highway, MacroPoint, others, they're already doing that, but they also can coach you into, and this is how you can also do it yourself as well.
Awesome. Well, we're going to wrap there. On behalf of everyone in the audience, thank you three so much for your time. Really appreciate it. We'll be hanging around here if folks have additional questions. Thank you all so much for coming. Really appreciate it.